Back in the late 90s, Louise and I owned an advertising agency in Atlanta, and we were renting the middle floor of a three-story building in Marietta, and the basement was rented by two other companies. We had the ground floor, and then the floor above us was rented by, or was offices for the guy who owned the building, and he owned several other buildings around us. And he was really a strange guy. He would come down at night when we weren't in the office and unscrew every other fluorescent bulb. We'd put them back on. He'd come back down when we weren't there and put them back on. We changed the locks. He got the locksmith out to change the locks back. Wanda, one of the women who worked for us, liked to sit out in the parking lot and smoke. So she smoked, and you couldn't smoke in our office. And so she'd sit out there and have a cigarette. And while she was having a cigarette, she would, have her lunch. And if she had some breadcrumbs and things, she'd toss them to the birds. And he said, "You can't. I don't want you feeding the birds in my parking lot on my property." And Wanda thought that was pretty arbitrary, and so she continued to feed the birds. So he went out and put rice out there, which birds eat, and it kills them. It swells up in their stomach and explodes their stomachs. So he started killing the birds so Wanda wouldn't feed them. Then we discovered that he was literally following some of our female employees home. And I was, the first couple times I heard this, I was like, I don't know about this, But then he followed my daughter, who didn't work for us, but was there a fair amount. She was last year of high school, and she had a car, and she would drop by after school and hang out with Louise. Louise ran the business, and I kind of ran the sales part and worked with the creative team. And Louise and I had started the company in 90. Whatever the year was. We started the company in 87, sold it in 96. And eventually we took this guy to court. We sued him to get out of the contract, to get out of the lease. And the judge just, when he found out what this guy was up to, just threw the book at him. It was very interesting. And a friend of mine did the lawsuit for us just for the fun of it, because he was so horrified by what had happened. And it was a small claims court. So one and only time I've ever been involved in a lawsuit. So that's my background with being at work and having somebody watch me. Turns out he was monitoring us as we were working. He was looking in our windows. He was keeping track of when we were there. He would come in at night and turn the thermostats down really, really low. We had a whole bunch of computers. This was an advertising agency, and we were producing, camera-ready copy. We had typesetting machines and computers, and we had to maintain a relatively stable temperature, chemicals for photography. This is back in the 90s. I mean, digital photography wasn't where it is now, and in the late 80s. And we were like in this war with our landlord. So you can imagine my shock when I discovered that there are companies like Quantified Workplace or Evolve that monitor employees on behalf of employers. Evolve has pulled together more than 500 million employee data points from across 13 countries. Things like how often employees interact with their supervisors, how long it takes an employee to get to the office. Sociometric Solutions puts sensors in name badges and monitors how employees move around the workplace, who they talk to, and in what tone of voice. I'm reading from a piece by Hannah Kuchler, Kuchler, titled Data Pioneers Watching Us Work in Today's Financial Times. Steelcase. They make desks. I've had a Steelcase. I've had Steelcase desks. They make good office equipment. Steelcase puts sensors in office furniture and buildings to see how workers interact. David Latham, its director of our research and strategy, quoting from the article, says the sensors are now so cheap they can be put practically anywhere, everywhere, arguing that employees could benefit by tracking their own performance. Yeah. The U.S. National Work Rights Institute is not impressed. Lou Maltby, the president, says, this is a real problem. He says most employees haven't got a clue of the extent to which they're being monitored. The fact of the matter is that many employers monitor their employees' email at work. They monitor all of their computer usage, every web page they go to. I mean, everything that they're doing, basically. And in the process, they may well be picking up passwords and things. So you'd think that you could go to court and get out of this monitoring the way that we got rid of the crazy landlord. And I'm convinced the guy was actually crazy, that he was OCD, that he was nuts. I mean, killing birds, really? But Lou Maltby, the president of the U.S. National Work Rights Institute, says, quote, no employee has ever won an invasion of privacy case based on employer monitoring and employer monitoring their computer. Never happened. Isn't this bizarre? You ever been monitored in the workplace? I can't imagine. Maybe I'm just like, an old fart. Maybe I'm just old school. Because I never post anything to Facebook, for example. Our show posts every day what we're up to, but I don't go on and say, I'm going out with, Jenny and Bill tonight. Louise and I are going to pizza. No, my private life is my private life. And I would feel that way whether I was, in front of 3 million people every day on TV and radio or not. And although I understand the impulse to share. I mean, one of my sisters-in-law is a very big Facebook poster, and I like to go on Facebook and read her posts. I have a better sense of her life. But I would personally have a hard time doing that. But that's voluntary giving of information. What about the involuntary giving of information? How would you feel if you discovered that your name badge had been recording all your conversations? How would you feel if you discovered that your employer was watching everything you typed into your computer all the time? It's happening. Increasingly, trust me.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 866-987-THOM.
Nova One, a U.S. company that runs customer call centers and has more than 2,000 employees, identified the characteristics of its most successful call operators and hired more people like them.